I've been a Fire Emblem fan for 8 years, I think, and all the games I played have left me with something. Awakening was the introduction that made me fall in love with the series. Blazing Blade gave me a taste of how great classic Fire Emblem is. Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn delivered top-notch gameplay, a fun challenge, and top-tier grinding. Fates? Three Houses made me appreciate morally great characters on a different level. But then there's one game that has eluded me since the beginning. One who the only thing I knew about it was the reputation that follows it. That being Fire Emblem Thracia 776. What happened to the other 775? This game has had lots of infamy ever since I can remember, being debatably the most obscure entry in the entire franchise, and it's easy to see why. Thracia suffered from one of the weirdest releases I've ever read about. First, it was released in 1999 on the Japan-exclusive Nintendo Power Service. It was basically a cartridge that you will take to stores to download Super Famicom games for a lower price. Then sometime later in the year 2000, the game was sold on retail cards. And I want you to give that some thought. Thracia came out around 3-4 years into the N64's lifespan. It's no wonder it's one of the lowest selling entries in the franchise, and so few people were aware of its existence. Nowadays it has become more well known thanks to the series' increased renown in recent years, and partially thanks to its representation in Fire Emblem Heroes, or more like Reinhardt's popularity.
You will come now.
Even though Thracia has gotten more exposure in recent years, I cannot confidently say more people have gotten to play it. And why is that? Because this game is a fucking nightmare! I think some of you are aware. I love challenging games. Nothing beats that feeling of satisfaction from overcoming tough obstacles using nothing but your skills and knowledge. However, there are times when a game crosses the line and it becomes so ball-kicking hard that it drives people away. But for me that doesn't matter as long as I'm having fun. I've beaten a number of them. I polished my reflexes with F-Zero GX. I endured the mutter that is Shin Megami Tensei Strange Journey on the original DS release. Devil May Cry 3 in Dante Most High difficulty was so unforgiving it got me on the verge of tears all red due to sheer rage. And I still conquered it. But then comes a different beast called Fire Emblem Thracia 776. Before I begin, I want to make a few things clear. Since Thracia still remains a Japan-exclusive game, I use an updated fan translation over the older fan translation. Yeah, I had to patch a patch to play this. More than just bringing the game to English with more proper localized names and terms, it also goes out of its way to implement some nice quality of life features, such as equipped weapons preview, see who can have a conversation with who, among many other things. Convenient stuff that doesn't get in the way of the game's difficulty. My only complaint is that this patch got rid of some of the most iconic quotes, such as
Drawing your sword, are you? What are you going to do? Kill me? Stupid bitch.
and
The idiots have fallen right into my trap! In America!
Luckily, because I used an emulator, I had access to fast forward features and save states. So yes, I know some people hate that stuff, but you really need them for this game! It's funny, because if you just look at the surface, Thracia can even be easy to understand to the average Fire Emblem fan. You have your grid-based gameplay, characters with different skills, classes, and weapons, an older but still easy to understand battle forecast, and of course, permadeath. The biggest source of difficulty comes from the new mechanics implemented, and Thracia added a lot of them. Capture, a mechanic that lets players, well, capture enemy units. This is done so you can loot their equipment, which is extremely important. But the catch here is that attempting to do so lowers your stats, and even after a successful capture, you're still left vulnerable with a penalty. The fatigue system that was reintroduced in Shadows of Valentia also made its debut here. But unlike that game, it's far more punishing this time around. Every action your characters perform makes them gain points of fatigue. If set points exceed their maximum HP, they'll be unable to participate in the next chapter. Then we have Fog of War. People hate them in other games, and they were just as bad here, where maps are completely obscured, leaving the player with next to no knowledge of the terrain if they go unprepared. Guiding chapters are another familiar face. If you manage to fulfill certain conditions on a map, you can unlock bonus chapters, which are an excellent way to get new units and useful items. But this is easier said than done. And finally, we have the escape mechanic. Simply put, make sure all your characters leave the map before tragedy happens. And you have to make sure everyone escapes before Leif, the main protagonist, leaves the map. Failing to do so will take away all the units that couldn't escape. The thing is, these new mechanics aren't just gimmicks you occasionally have to use, or obstacles to deal with from time to time. No, you need to exploit them to their fullest. You need to truly understand them no matter what. Do you know what makes Thracia so brutal? It's not just trying to overcome the map you find yourself on. You have to always plan for the long term. And the mechanics I just talked about play a big role in that. Capture is the quintessential command of Thracia. The game doesn't have your standard bullions to make some quick cash. So your best options to make money are either arena abuse or capture enemies, get their best weapons, and sell whatever you don't need. You always have to check enemy equipment for anything that can help you later, because you'll need it. If you see a store that sells you torches, you buy that shit until you go broke. Fog of War chapters are everywhere, but this preparation can be enough to give you an advantage. I know guided chapters are optional, but I seriously recommend you to always make an effort to get to them. They're just as difficult as the rest of the game, but the rewards and experience you can get inside them can take a huge weight off your shoulders in the future. And just when you think you have everything under control, then comes the fatigue system. Your best units absolutely killed it in the previous chapter? Well, they can participate now because they are tired. And sure, there are workarounds in the form of stamina drinks, but those are limited. This forces you to always have a backup team for any situation. And not just because of the fatigue. In Thracia, your cavaliers and flyers are forced to dismount while indoors, so a lot of amazing units suffer a huge blow because of this. You like Fane, your incredibly powerful Lance Cavalier? Too bad! While dismounted, he's just a shadow of the monster he is. These are all factors you always have to consider if you want to progress. And I still haven't mentioned the hidden mechanics that are never explained to you. Movement stars, leadership, follow-up critical multiplier. You will notice a difference once you know what they do. But you have to search that yourself. I mentioned earlier that guidance chapters were a great opportunity to get new units and more items. But you have no idea how cryptic it is to access some of them. I heavily recommend you to have a guide in hand, because there's no way you'll know how to access them all without some help. So you're well prepared. You understand the mechanics. You have a guide to help you a bit. Now, guess what? Here comes RNGesus. I know luck is never certain, but I've never played a Fire Emblem game that toyed so much with my hit rates. I will miss 90% but still get hit by 40s afterwards. I had such a bizarre luck in this game that I will go. I'm okay now. And turns out, you need to place your hopes in RNG more than anything. I put all my faith on strategies that pretty much require my units to not get hit. But nothing proves that more than healers. Here's some funny trivia. Did you know Thracia is the only game where your healers can miss healing you? That is some bullshit. I mean, sure, they can heal you twice on the same turn, but that also means they can miss that second heal. Can you imagine how much that will suck in real life?
Me estoy muriendo. Necesito un doctor.
Yo soy doctor. De Thracia.
Think about it. Every chapter is hard on its own, and how you conquer it depends on what you do and what you did in the past. And these are things you experience at the beginning. You will think that the first few chapters will take it easy on you. But no, it's actually the opposite. These are the most insane first chapters in the entire series, and I can prove it. The first maps will take me more than an hour to beat at minimum. Chapter 4 took me 40 turns to beat. 40 fucking turns! I swear, I genuinely tried my best with it, and I just barely scraped by. And my actions there jeopardized the next few chapters. I lost the 2 lockpicks you're supposed to have at this point. I couldn't open chests that contain good items, and I couldn't save half the children in chapter 4X. This locked me out of a new unit and useful weapons. And that became a chain in which consequence made the following chapters a nightmare to complete. I was genuinely considering giving up multiple times. And once I finally had a sizable army, I thought things would get easier. But that's the point where Thracia just says,
Enough cock rating! Time for the endurance test!
the rest of the game didn't give me room to breathe. It was so rare to find a chapter that felt easier than the last one. And all of them gave me shit for different reasons. Either because of fog of war, because I had to get to my objective as soon as possible, because of infinite reinforcements, because the boss was near impossible to kill, or a combination of all of them. Every time I was required to try something different and see what was the best approach. It made me experiment with new strategies and find a new way. But do you know what the biggest irony is? I like that actually! It was genuinely refreshing! Thracia made me break my comfort zones in Fire Emblem as I was forced to do things I wouldn't normally do. I didn't recruit everyone cause it compromised victory. And also because some of these recruitment requirements are inhuman! I'm fucking serious! Search online for how to recruit Savior in Thracia and you'll see what I mean. It's next to impossible. I let some of my units die! The last time I ever did that was when I tried to get the secret story segments in Blazing Blade. Not even Genealogy or Radiant Dawn made me do that. Here it was necessary if I wanted to succeed. You know how in other Fire Emblems you get really good weapons that you tend to save for emergencies? Even early in the game I wasted most of their uses because I was always put in life or death situations. Normally I tend to be anti-pre-promotes unless I really like the character. But Thracia was like, no, you need to use this unit's unique strengths if you want to make it easier for you. Dagdar is excellent to capture enemies. Olwen is a great addition to your army due to her exclusive weapons. Dean can effectively replace Karin, an indispensable unit, by being both a support and combat unit. And they all remain useful from beginning to end. Actually, that's another thing I loved about the game. Almost every unit I recruited served a purpose. Either because they bought me time, fulfill a certain niche that helped me once, or were just outright incredible. This character is my favorite example. Tina. You recruit her at a time when most of your army should be competent. She comes with terrible stats, is severely underleveled, and has the worst rank in staffs. So what's so great about her? She can trivialize one of the hardest chapters in the entire game. It took me a lot of effort. I created a viable grinding spot, I made her break so many staffs, and what happened? I beat one of the hardest chapters in Fire Emblem history in just 2 turns! Can you even begin to imagine how I felt when I heard that the River of Thracia was gonna kick my ass, and then I completely tore it in half only because I believed in this girl's potential? That's how I feel about Thracia 776. This is a game that is always against you. No matter if I made a good or a bad strategy, every step I took felt like... No! But regardless of how dire things look, if I paid attention to what I had at the moment, if I had prepared very well, if I could exploit the skills of each character and had a little bit of luck, there was always a way to press forward. Map full of ballistas? Let me get characters that can help me to dodge better and move them all in group. Broken weapon hidden behind an impossible situation? Use the warp staff that I saved up to this point, get the lance, use my dancer, and use the rescue staff that I saved up to this point. Annoying dark mages that can put me to sleep? Just silence them and rob their equipment later. Every time I moved to a new turn, every time I conquered a situation that felt impossible, it was an achievement because I made it happen. So many times I thought to myself, if I hadn't done this guidance chapter and hadn't trained this unit very well, maybe this would have been the end of my run. But I'm glad that I did it. With this, I'm not pretending the game is really tough but fair. No, that honor goes to Radiant Dawn. If there was a scale, I will say Thracia inclines itself to the more bullshit side of difficulty. I cannot imagine someone beating it on a Super Famicom without all the luxuries you get from an emulator. While the gameplay had me on the edge at all times, there were also other factors that helped me to enjoy this adventure further. You may have noticed it by now, but Thracia looks incredible! Sure, it released way past the console's lifespan, but that doesn't diminish the quality of the sprite work. Just compare returning characters to how they look in Genealogy of the Holy War, and the difference is like night and day. The maps are so easy to read, and the battle animations are insanely fluid. Just look at Leif go! Woo! The soundtrack is mesmerizing. carrying that unique crunch from the SNES era, while having a wide selection of different tracks, all of them making the fantasy warfare theme much more immersive. And it goes without saying, I love the story. For those who don't know, Thracia acts as a complement to genealogy, and I think it does it well because it adds more content to the continent of Jogdral. But my favorite part is that just like its predecessor, it never let go of my attention. And that was because it made me feel genuine emotions. The tension was always looming. You could easily tell how dire the situation was. The comedy comes just at the right moment without feeling forced, and it's actually very funny. And not gonna lie, at times Thracia got me emotional. It's crazy to think that a bunch of sprites can get me like that. But it happened! The writing is just that good, and the characters are very likable. I wouldn't say it's one of the best cast in the series, but you can easily live with a few new favorites. And as a final comment, while a lot of the new mechanics added so much to the difficulty, I do appreciate that most of them eventually were polished and became staples in the series. In the end, Fire Emblem Thracia 776 was a very unique experience. It pissed me off. It constantly kicked me while I was down. It pushed me to new limits, and I had a lot of fun. I might sound like an elitist by saying this, but this game is not for everyone. The only people I can recommend it to is to those who love classic Fire Emblem. And that is still a tricky recommendation, because Thracia is on an entirely different level. I'll repeat what I said. The conveniences that come with the emulators, quality of life features and guides are a big help. But even if you have that at your disposal, it still doesn't change the core essence of the game. It's super challenging, it's very unforgiving, and it will test all your knowledge. You know it's bad when the game itself tells you, you better prepare to lose some units. Play it only if you feel you're prepared for it. I know some hardcore fans might say, oh sure, but Awakening, Conquest and New Mystery are harder in Lunatic. And to that I say, yeah, did you know that if you increase the difficulty of a game, the game becomes harder? Who would have guessed?
Así me dolió.
Pero no tanto, valió la pena.
Valió la pena.
¡Au!